I'm Sudipto. I'm the head of investment risk at Principal Asset Management, focusing across all asset classes and as well as, like a global farm-wide view. Joined there about a year back, and before that, I have experiences back in Goldman and Lord Abbett, like a small asset manager. Rafiq?
Great. Yeah, my name is Rafiq Awan, Chief Solution Architect at MFS. I'm actually part of Investment Data Office leadership team, and we are working on to build next generation investment data platform to meet emerging business needs. Looking forward to have this exciting conversation.
I can go. Hi, my name is Chris Farrell. I run the U.S. practice and global strategy for Finborn Technology. My experience in the past has been with investment banking and consulting, having worked across Tokyo, Singapore in the last 10 years in London. We provision SaaS software to the finance community and underpin some key blue chip global players in capital markets.
Hi, my name is Jeff Burnett. I'm the Chief Risk Officer at an event-driven hedge fund based in New York. Previously served that role at another hedge fund, and I've also operated a consultancy business providing risk management solutions to different buy-side firms.
Great. So I guess we're done with the introduction round, and I can start, like, while we are waiting for Jay to join, just kind of talk from the risk management, like, from the business perspective, like some of the...
Sudipto, I think I have somewhat solved the issues.
Oh, okay. Jay, perfect. There you go.
Very good. Boy, nothing like having almost basically, I was going to say, have you ever seen a swan in a hurricane? On top, they're perfectly calm. Under the water, the feet are moving incredibly rapidly. Basically, we have like almost like a black swan event. But I thank you for introducing everyone. Did everybody introduce themselves?
Yes.
Very good, very good. So that actually saves a lot of time. And I was just going to say, the way you guys and everybody handled it, now I know I have a total expert panel on board, which is absolutely fantastic. So basically, okay, I'm Jay Wolstenholme, Research Director, not of technology, but though in Chartis Research. And today we're going to be talking, it might have been said before, this is the panel on state-of-the-art and expertly managing the investment management life cycle. So I did want to say after the introductions is that we have a great mix of business-focused people with a technology bent, and then definitely technology experts that support the business. So basically, we're going to go through a series of questions where we all know that on the buy side, investment management, asset managers, asset owners, is that everybody is concerned about return, what the investment charter is. Technology supports that goal and pushes that goal. Both know one can't exist without the other, but definitely want to kind of make sure as we go through this investment management life cycle. And again, just real quickly, think of like a 2x2 table. We have in square number 1, decision support, analytics, risk. Then box 2, that we have trading and being able to execute those asset managements. Then we need to process them. And then we have a whole bunch of other aspects. We'll stay kind of basically up in the top layers today. But though with that, let me turn to you, Sudipto. Let's start out with, what are you seeing, or for all the panelists, what are you seeing in your day-to-day processes what's automated, where do you see, or basically what are you concentrating on now, and within that investment management life cycle? Go ahead, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Walter. So essentially, I'll start with this. I mean, given my background, I just joined Principal about a year back, and I'm trying to build this, whole second line, firm-wide investment risk, platform, which is basically, looking at all our holdings, right? Not just the funds, the strategies across different boutiques, like, across the different investment teams that we have acquired over time, everything together. Like, how do we look like, in terms of risk exposure, like what are our exposures to, like, sudden events, like if you think of the banking crisis, if you think of, like we had COVID and all the, like, those sort of periods, like quickly ability to, have a firm-wide exposure view, like, that's one thing. And the other one is like, looking at emerging risks, like, looking for what is our exposure to a scenario, like a hypothetical scenario or like a historical scenario, things like that, very quickly and fast, right? So that, we spend less time. I mean, I think that's where, like, a very efficient technological framework is very useful, like, meaning the risk team spends less time gathering all the data to make the decision, but instead has all the data, quickly able to drill down and take the decision in terms of what's going to be our next step. Like, is it like we have too much exposure, so we should be doing some hedging or portfolio rebalancing? That's like the whole, platform we are trying to think of, like digital risk management platform. And definitely, the challenges I face is like we have holdings data. Just think of very simple, like holdings data across so many different farms, like boutiques across the farm, just getting them quickly together, like having a nice, like a dashboard interactive where you can deal with, all the, can I drill down, where is it coming from, which boutique, which portfolio, which type of asset class, is the ultimate goal. And of course, you need risk models integrated for that, keeping in mind, like just in sync with the previous session, like you have privates, you have publics, and then all the different like securitized products, equity, fixed income. So it's a pretty complex initiative, and I find it pretty challenging, and a lot of scope for technology to play a vital role.
Perfect. Thank you. And Walter, over to you. What's your mix of like some of what you're seeing on as business priorities, investing priorities, and then maybe a little tie-in with your technical staff and work?
Sure. Yes. Can everyone hear me? Just a quick sound check.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to do that
great.
after every time.
Didn't get a chance to introduce myself. Yes, Walter Joyce. I work at TIAA and the head of the investment services team. So our responsibilities include all the trading, investment operations, performance reporting, some data analytics in there. And so, yeah, really our priorities, we support 120,000, accounts, about $70 billion under management. And we sort of pick up the process as soon as an investment decision is made by one of our portfolio managers, investment managers. We're responsible for executing that, that decision across multiple portfolios, single portfolios. And, really our priority is to try to make progress every day, in our processes, right? So we're from implementation to attribution, contribution reporting back to the portfolio investment manager as to how well that decision is working out based on various benchmarks and time horizons. So I'd say that, again, the primary, goal is to keep the trains running on time and try to improve them, get them to the station even quicker, which is, no small challenge. But we found that if you can improve, across, every element of your, sort of sphere of responsibility slightly, then that's the path to, to long-term progress.
So, Walter, just like a follow-up is that, so do you see, because of tight margins and, the lower fee environment we're in, more pressure across for automation and technology assistance?
I think that's probably one of the, sort of compelling factors. I think another one is just, You have this suite of emerging, sort of application technologies that are now available to, let's just say, a trader or someone in investment operations that are inside your sort of enterprise, sort of app store. Python, let's just call it, Snowflake. There's a lot of ways to today automate things that historically just weren't possible. The tools weren't available. They're on-prem. They're really difficult to manage. So just the opportunity now to make so much progress with automation and continuous improvement, I think that's the main driver, right? And that's what's, probably the most exciting to our team.
Got it. So Jeffrey, over to you. I mean, I know you're chief risk officer. It sounds like you do a lot of Python coding, maybe yourself. And you're definitely that mix of knowing the business really well and working with technology. Do I have it partially right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the role I try to play as a risk manager, is getting more data. There's a lot more data available now than there was a few years ago. Trying to get more of that data out into people's hands, and also I think the user has evolved a lot. Even on the investment side now, I've worked with a couple different teams where the portfolio managers are highly competent in terms of programming, and a lot of them want an API rather than a finished report. They would prefer to have access to the raw data and apply their own assumptions and transformations to the data. So I think when I'm thinking about building out a reporting and analytics platform now, I think it's really important to compartmentalize. You've got the raw data, keep that separate, a transformation layer where people may have their own assumptions, how they want to calibrate that data. And then finally, I think the most difficult piece is the finished report that maybe serves the investor relations team or sometimes the CIO, that brings together many different data sets. But I think if you can really focus on those first two parts, you can get a lot of people in your firm involved and consuming and making decisions based off of that data.
Good. So, Rafiq, let me turn it over to you. I mean, I know that you and Christopher are top knowledge, top shelf technologists. And so, Rafiq, what are you doing to, I'm not going to use the word support, but basically be that platform and new wave for technology within asset managers? First off, did you get a chance to properly introduce yourself?
Yes, I did. Thanks, Walter. I appreciate that. Again, Rafiq Kawan, Chief Solution Architect at MFS. So, so I think to answer your question, Jay, I would like to, just based on, as Walter and Sid and Jeff mentioned, I really think of three key challenges that are faced by most of the investment management firms, right? The number one is it takes a long time to transmit data from its source to the end users, right, across the investment lifecycle. And if you really kind of think about it, why it takes a long time is because we build these very complex data pipelines due to legacy technology. As Walter mentioned, we have a huge opportunity to do that due to advancement in technology to really simplify that. So that's really number one challenge. The number two challenge we have is, again, I say that one of our investors said, okay, the data is useless if you cannot drive the insight from the data, right? So it's not easy to drive fresh insights from the underlying data to make investment decisions, right? And again, if you think about it, why it takes a long time and why we cannot really drive insights, the bottom root cause is really lack of data quality. And as Walter mentioned, we don't have data available at the most granular level, right? So that's number two challenge. And I think the number three challenge is when it comes to end users like Sid and Walter and Jeff, right, who are really focused on to generate alpha for the clients, right? They are really, it takes a long time if there's an issue in the end user tools to really identify the root cause. And if you really think about it from the technology perspective and where we have a huge opportunity is that because we don't have full data lineage available from its source to the target, right? So, and also that again is not available in the end user. So you may have data lineage available, but if it's not available to the end user, it's useless, right? So I guess those are the three things that I really think of the key challenges, right? And I mean, one last thing that I want to mention is going back to the complexity of the data pipeline is really as you move across the investment life cycle from front to middle to back, the most important thing is how to synchronize transaction and position across the investment life cycle. I think that's where, due to advancement in technology, I think we have another huge opportunity that we'll talk about later, where we need to think about single unified book of record.
Yeah, no, very, very good, very good. It just seems so simple when you talk about it, and we'll get into, the old IBOR investment book of records, and it just seems like, what's the big deal? Just get the data, but though, when you get into that complexity. So, Chris, over to you. I mean, with Finborn, I mean, you're really doing some amazing work of componentization, but though again. Let me just check. Did you get a chance to properly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I did, Jay. Thanks again. Yeah, I agree with the points that the panel is making. I think one of the things that we see as a challenge is that to address inefficiencies in productivity, especially over the past 8 or 9 years, there's been this move to kind of these monolithic enterprise data models to rule them all. Kind of looking for this golden source of data. When we know that finance isn't linear, things happen to you in finance as much as you do it to that. Corporate actions, market moves, regulatory changes, and there are multiple sources of information coming in that need to be surfaced, interpreted, and joined together. And what we find is that things operate in silos. And what I mean by silos, I'm not just saying asset classes or geographies. There's a real divide between data that's used for operations versus data used for analytics. And that causes a lot of consternation, not just from a cost effectiveness perspective, but also from, are you using the data that you're producing as well as consuming from outside of your borders? But I think the key that comes down to all of this is having a regime in place that's open, that can interoperate, and through that give you reproducibility. Because as mentioned before, if you don't have an ability to be able to reproduce something, you have a very hard time to understand what happened when things go awire. And a real move and a real shift from kind of an ETL stance to more of an ELT stance is really what's required. Because you need to have that lineage, you need to have that view as to what data, what's the provenance of the data, where should I be using it, and can I use it from an entitlements perspective?
And you use 3 acronyms there. What? Extract, transfer, and load. What did you switched? Go over that one more time.
So there's a classical model in a lot of the firms that we see that do manufacturing of data. So they extract it from one or more systems. They do some sort of transformation of it. They throw away data. They take certain fields, and then they load it into another system. And when you go from one system to another, or one geography to another, or one batch to another, you sometimes lose that data fidelity, and you have to replay the whole thing over again once it gets to your gold copy client reporting, or when you're facing off to the regulators. Rather than what we see a lot of folks doing in this space, especially for folks that are towards the bottom of that funnel, is not transforming that data, moving it across in its raw form, using immutability, and be able to give that data lineage. So if something were to happen, you have that at rest on tap for you to be able to do investigations. So those are the kinds of things that we're helping clients with.
Yeah, as Rafiq said, is like from that data, especially as it goes up from the back to the front, is the lineage is questionable, and also too is a lot of times the granular aspects don't get passed along. But Jeffrey, let me ask you a question. Again, Antera Capital or Antera is like, you're a smaller hedge fund, and are you like branching out? Are you doing all your own development? Are you going out for packages? Obviously Snowflake keeps coming up as a major tool. Here, I had this question later on, but let me pop it to you. Will Snowflake solve all issues, or do you even go in that direction?
Yeah, I think so. I don't personally use Snowflake, but we use something comparable to it. I think it's now, so we're a small firm. I think just myself and the CTO have been able to do quite a bit more work than I would have been able to do in the past, thanks to the availability of Python packages. It makes the speed at which I can organize data and the way I can index and make it transform it. It's so much easier and faster. And by compartmentalizing the data, we've got the raw data. That's something that a pure technologist can really focus on. And through some of the tools that are like cloud-based technologies, we can store immense amounts of data now, which gives me a lot more historical data to use for computing summarized measures. So I think it's I love where we're heading with cloud-based technologies and the availability of open source tools for analysis. It puts a lot of power in my hands that I didn't have a few years ago.
And yeah, very good. Let me turn it over. Walter, what do you again, kind of hit upon where are you seeing technology solving some of your issues? Are we talking, pre-investment, investment decision-making, post-trade processing? What about within those categories?
Yeah, a good question, Jay. I'd say across every category, you can apply, so everything's a process. You can apply some process improvement technologies, right? So the ones that were referenced, invariably are helpful because they're available and weren't previously. We tack on, the delivery of the information. We use Power BI and Tableau. We build a command center that, again, pulls raw data from, every application we have access to, accounting systems, market data, performance. And we try to serve it up in a way that we believe our users, the constituents, investment managers, portfolio managers, advisors will be able to use it to make better decisions. But I don't think that you can, especially today, find any area of, that investment life cycle where you can apply some of these open source, again, enterprise, available applications to make progress. And I'd say that, from a data management or data architecture perspective, you probably want to integrate a GitLab, GitHub. One of those version control, applications are critical because you have your citizen developers, across your various teams, and they're doing really good work and, creating stored procedures and their own sort of custom scripts, but you want to have some controls around that. So one of those, services does a really good job of allowing you to annotate your script, your code, save it out there, check it back out, make changes, and then, somebody can oversee that with a lot of confidence and understand what those requirements are for that particular task.
So Walter, we've talked a fair amount in the past, and you've had multiple or numerous positions where you have actually been on the desk, involved in risks. But though it seems like you constantly are becoming more and more tech savvy. What's your comment on that? Are you happy about it? Does it cause you angina?
Yeah, no, I'm thrilled about it. I mean, we're only becoming more tech savvy because the tools are now available, and you've got this transition from on-premise to cloud, software applications. So as that continues, and your users get more and more access to tools and applications to help them solve problems, increase that velocity, of whatever their core tasks are. I just think that's going to continue. We haven't talked about AI or machine learning, but again, that's just another accelerator of, some pretty well-documented things that we have to do in investment services. across any financial services firm, or probably the second, most regulated, industry. It's pretty obvious what has to happen, or pretty clear. It's improving the quality of those processes, and with the proper controls through automation is now again just available at a time that historically has not been the case. So.
Yeah, I want to come back to you with another question, but I want to get over to Sudipto. Sudipto, that on the risk side, again, be honest. What's your involvement with tech? Is it like that? Are you deeply involved, or are you looking for new tools? Or are you scanning the market for again, obviously no one divulge anything that they don't want to, but though, are there outside packages that are you Lego blocking into your existing structure? And that maybe not only talk about at principal, but though maybe in some of your past work also.
Sure, Jay. No, happy to talk about that. And my background is I started in engineering, and then I was a quant in Goldman, so pretty hands-on, right? So and I was also listening to Jeffrey. So yeah, even in a principal, or in general, my previous firm, Lord Abbott, the risk team, is in general very hands-on. In fact, we have a couple of data scientists or quants within the risk team, which and they basically work with the tech teams as well. In fact, I also work with them very closely, because one thing that I have understood is these two teams have to work very closely for to produce a product which is successful and intuitive, right? I mean, we need to take the time, the risk team needs to take the time to explain, right? What's the end purpose. And I have seen the traction is way better when you kind of take it in that route, instead of saying, look, I just need this data, but instead tell them this is the reason I need the data. I'll analyze it this way, and this will help me in my business purpose this way. Because then when they have a better picture, I have talked with many of the data architects at principal, the the engagement gets much better. Now, in terms of the tools, I think a hybrid approach is generally what I would go for. One, you cannot rely completely on external vendors. I mean, of course, they're robust in terms of risk models, but then end of the day, you can have some very specific investments in your portfolio, right? Which maybe you can from a risk perspective, or even from a quant perspective, you can model it better with all the additional knowledge, especially if you think of privates or even esoteric asset classes. So here, what we have been doing is we have been sourcing some standard risk data from some of the risk vendors, building our own cloud-based platform, Snowflake. You mentioned we are leveraging Snowflake along with some of the other tools there in data science. Python is out there, so consume a lot of the raw data from vendors or internal holdings, benchmark, peer data, and then you develop some, your own, process, to do pinpoint risk analysis that we think would be useful. I mean, that's the approach we have been taking.
Just maybe both to use and Walter, is though can Business BI or Tableau, can they basically get to be the old spreadsheet of that? At first there seems to be organization, but then all of a sudden some models become more complex, and the person leaves who developed it. Do you see any of? I mean, I know Walter, you mentioned GitHub and other aspects for organization, but though, is there still the possibility of that becoming, lack of a better word, not spaghetti code or spaghetti development? Any thoughts there, Sudipto or Walter?
Yeah, I can chime in and let hand over to Walter. That's actually a great point, right? I mean, like, this is sometimes I've also seen, like, in some of my previous roles, like, you there's a big like urgency to quickly like achieve, like develop this model, have it up and running, and so there's a lot of ad hoc. You go in, you develop it ad hoc, and then but then comes the okay, now it's in production, and now you need to maintain it, right? So here, like in principle, like it's like being a bigger firm, and like it's like a insurance based, it's asset management for Principal Financial Group, which is an insurance company. Like our operational risk focus is also very involved. So any developments we do, I mean, of course, like sometimes like there's an emergency, you kind of do an ad hoc code, but at the back of the mind, we're always keeping in mind that code control, backup, like key person risk, right? It's something keep in mind that code is shared across at least a couple of people know that. And then when going to Power BI, I mean, yeah, I mean, like exactly. I mean, that's the way I think to go, is because if I just think from an end user, like I need to quickly look at data, and also quickly need to drill down, right? So that I instead of having a PDF report, right, or like a Excel where I had to, like, things can get messed up. I think that like those sort of interactive dashboards are very useful in the current framework.
Walter, any comment?
I would agree. I think it's sort of imperative. I think at this stage, again, with the availability of data from every data source via API or extracts, ultimately they have to tell a story. And you, as the data architect or analyst or business manager, you got to try to find the story and then communicate it out. But that's kind of difficult to anticipate, given potential the number of users and the complexity of users. But what you can do with Power BI and Tableau is you can create a version, and fortunately those native applications do have version control, right? So you can see the filters and the formulas, and you can do rollbacks. And so the point was well made. Your reports will go into production, and people will rely on them. So unlike some of the scripts that you're writing, you need to check those into a GitLab or a GitHub. With Tableau and Power BI, you actually have that transparency right there in the report. You understand the filters and the formulas that were used to generate this data, and you have all kinds of tools that you can give the end user so they can run versions of the original report that sort of meet their needs, whether it's in trying to make a different investment decision or analyze risk or holdings. Historically, someone would email you for another version of that report. You would, sort of modify it, appropriately and email it back. Well, now those tools have made it really easy to give the power to the user, within the constraints of, the views and formulas and data that's available, and have them, create their own. That just seems to be the most efficient way. And again, historically not available. Reporting was, 1-to-1. Now with this, sort of centralized, sort of command center framework, you can now serve every user across the investment, sort of, life cycle in ways that, are meaningful to them.
That's perfect. So, okay, Chris, over to you.
Jay, I'd love to, I think for us, a lot of our clients look at the world in terms of, in this particular topic, there's a big difference between data virtualization and data visualization. And I think that a lot of the tooling out there helps us can visualize, write reports, and put information in a way that's digestible so that people can make, basically evidence-based or data-driven decisions and satisfy reporting requirements. The virtualization componentry is I find to be the more interesting technology, because that reduces the need to copy information across multiple systems. Not all systems, you don't need to have one system to rule them all with all the data in one place. We see a lot of work with people doing things with their IBORs and with their CRM systems on the fly at rest. They get reproducibility, they get immutability. That sheen and surface that they put on top of it to visualize the information is kind of the last mile and the easiest step. But that virtualization, getting that right, especially across geographies that have, data domicile, data residency issues is key. And we really see that as a really strong adoption across all of the clients that we work with.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Chris, over to you. I wanted you to do some bragging of some of your recent, wins and accomplishments, because again, okay, I'm going to throw the business users under the bus a touch, but though it's that foundational enterprise data as you're going across, especially geographical regions, multiple asset classes, is incredibly complex. Literally what we've been talking about it for at least the last 15 years. So you can tell I'm always impressed with the work that you're doing to be able to componentize that and work on it. So can you expound a little more on some of the work that you've been doing?
Yeah, I'm conscious of time here. I'll keep my comments extremely brief. I think
no. We actually can go another 5 minutes because of all the tech glitches. So
okay, all right. I'll still keep it brief. I think for us, it really is putting the power back into the clients so they can focus on their secret sauce. You're going to have to have multiple systems for multiple purposes, being able to interoperate across those and be able to move from a legacy system estate to one that is a better reflection of your target operating model is important. And to do that in a way, and I think we've talked a lot about the technology and the advancements, but I think there's also been a sea change in implementation. Those kind of 4-year big bang convoy implementations are quite risky, not just for companies because they're typically not very successful, but also for the stakeholders who have to champion that and the political capital they have to churn through to move things forward. So I think we see a lot more folks not having to make a choice between something strategic versus something tactical. We see a lot of strategic work happening in a very iterative, fast manner because there are different toolings out there. And I think that for those houses that are focused on that, and I think as Walter said, keeping the trains running and improvement and continuous improvement is the way forward.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Rafiq, over to you. But though I was just going to say, it's when I used to be a project manager, which thank God I'm not anymore, but though it would have a tactical movement going that was quick and get something else up, in Python, or back then it was Perl and JavaScript. And then though really key, as it seems like both Sudipto and Walter and Jeffrey are all saying, it there has to be strategic initiatives going on or you get yourself into a mess. Any comment on that? And then feel free to comment on what you were saying about IBOR and what the new IBOR is. And maybe explain quickly what IBOR is to the rest of the group.
Absolutely.
Thanks
not
a lot.
LIBOR. Yeah.
Not LIBOR. We're talking IBOR.
Yes. So I guess my answer would be two-pronged, right? One is I really agree with all the panelists, right? I really want to think about two things, right, that we need to really, when we look at the investment life cycle, you look at operational processes and then you look at the analytical processes, our decision support. So let me start with the operational processes and what needs to be done to really, and what we can do to really leverage latest technology. So I think our operational processes to simplify and to going back to my point earlier, to synchronize this transaction and position across the investment life cycle. I know we had this where we have accounting book of record, which is really your source of truth, provide accounting data like official end of day and start of day position. And then you have this investment book of record, which is really providing live positions, right? And then you also have this performance book of record, right? I really think of that having these multiple book of records across the investment life cycle really run into a lot of complexity. So due to advancement in technology, I really foresee where we are going to really have this single unified book of record, which you think of like multiple book of record platform that hopefully you can leverage are available in the market. But that's really the key to success, because if you don't do that, you're going to run into the challenges of really getting this data right across the investment life cycle from front to back. So that's the number one thing. And the second thing is on the decision support. We have a huge opportunity. I think Chris mentioned, another mentioned, like I really think of this, that when you look at the simplifying the decision support, you need to make sure you have this unified data platform, right? Again, as Chris mentioned, that we obviously don't want to build these monolithic platforms, right? Which are hard to evolve, right? And so we really want to think about this platform with open ecosystem. And that's where we have a huge opportunity. I think Chris mentioned ELT versus the ETL, right? So that's where we have a lot of tools, like emerging tools in the market. Like, for example, to simplify the data pipeline, you can use Fivetran, you can use DBT, right? Which is for transformation. Fivetran is really to simplify and get onboard data easily. So there are a lot of tools available in the market to really simplify these data pipelines. And also, I guess you guys mentioned the Snowflake, right? Which is obviously the game changer where, especially for the investment management firms, this advanced data sharing capabilities, like where we used to really copy all this data from vendors, right? And that's pretty complex. Now, those days are gone, where you can leverage this advanced data sharing capabilities to onboard data set very, very quickly, and it will also simplify the data pipelines. So, yeah, I want to be brief. In interest of time, I can go on and on, but I hope they answer your question, Ajay.
That was perfect. Yeah, this is all an appetizer, and we wanted to get a little, into private equity. And Sudipto, you mentioned private equity in our pre-talks, but though, definitely when we see leverage and an investment into what I think there's over 800 million companies in the world, very few are public. So to be able to get those data sets. But though, Jeff, let me end with you. So, okay, so you're doing a lot of your own development. I mean, like without a good enterprise data set, it's a lab experiment. Are you suffering from that? I mean, you have to be really conscious that you have full data and the correct data, which is even more onerous, that you're responsible mostly yourself for that.
Yeah, I agree, but I try to focus on making things as transparent as possible and getting as much data in the hands of users. They will bring to me the issues they find, and they may not be the ones capable of fixing them. But when they see, the implied vol that's interpolated from the vol surface is way too high for this asset. Okay, then I can look into the issue. As long as I make that data available, and it's not just simply an option price, but it's all of the parameters that go into value that option, then yeah, people will notice. So I think if you can focus on putting more data in the hands of users around you, you'll put yourself in a better position to succeed.
Yeah. Actually, let me end with you. You recently said you read a book with a quote in it. Do you remember it? Or if not, I'll read it.
No, yes, thanks a lot. Yes, I think that's a great way to end this. Basically, the quote is that you cannot really build a world-class investment system if you fail to have world-class data. So I think key to success is to have world-class data. So we really need to start with foundation, which is the data, and simplify the data pipelines. And again, that single book of record, single source of truth. Because over the time, due to legacy technology, we have these multiple data duplication and data silos, right? So I think I really believe in that quote strongly, that you cannot really build a world-class investment system without building world-class investment data.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I want to end on a definitely positive note. But though I've been around for a few decades, and that's been going on for the same amount of time. But though we'll definitely get there. Okay, I want to thank my panel. Thank you very much for bearing with all the issues. And I think we definitely covered a lot of good material. Again, this is just an appetizer. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.